What are we gonna do? What decisions will we make? How will we come together? How will we put aside our differences? And all these differences that we've been inundated with, that we've been conditioned in. But you know what's funny? The more I talk to folks who don't look like me, who don't live in my neighborhood, who doesn't think like I think independently, the more I realize we have more in common than we do different. There is a bigger plot and plan. Not here to discuss that in detail right now. But again, just wanted to bear witness to you, Kwame Brown, that we're here. Before I wrap it up, and again, wanted to make this video, wanted to put this message out. Number one, because you don't know me. It was time for me to get on camera to represent us, because I listened to my mama's cooking. It was time for me to get on to share, and for you to be able to not only hear and listen to the words that I'm sharing, but to feel my spirit. You know, one of the things that men have is discernment. We may not always talk about it. We may not always share with you about it. But let's be clear. Discernment is one of the things we have. Some may call it instinct, intuition, a hunch, a feeling. We have discernment. And we hear the pitch and the frequency of other men when they speak. It will impact every sense of the human frame when a man speaks. Likewise, when a woman speaks. You know, before I share this last story with you, Kwame, I never forget hearing one of my mentors talk about the king of the jungle, the lion himself. And the question that he posed was, who trains the king of the jungle? Who teaches him how to hunt? Who guides him? Who nourishes him? His mama. And through the balance of parents, through the balance, see, that's the issue. That's what Kwame Brown is talking about, ladies and gentlemen. He's addressing the imbalance within our system and within our local communities at large. There's been an imbalance for years, right? And we can't fix everything overnight. We understand that. but we can do our part. And I represent all the organizations, all the local parents, all the big brothers and big sisters, all the community watchers and lookouters, all the big mamas and the little mamas, right? All the aunties and grandmamas in our local community who have been looking out for our babies, this next generation, as best we could. And what I realized, or what was eventually made known to me and revealed to me, was that I too had something to contribute as a barber. Lastly, 1993. And Kwame, I've only shared this one other time publicly. But it's so appropriate. And because we're cut from the same cloth, I decided to share it with you. 1993, I'm in barber school. I'm in barber school after withdrawing from college. There's a child on the way that I am the father of, my oldest son. And so I withdrew from school because my parents were more old school, and Mama said, once learning that we were pregnant, my girlfriend was pregnant, Mama said, you got to get a job. So I withdrew from college, literally. And I came home and enrolled in barber school. Barbering had been a tool and a skill, a trade, that's another thing we'll get into, that had been taught to me by a mentor and a man in my neighborhood who basically told his son and I, if y'all want the privilege of being able to utilize my vehicle to go out Friday nights to the football games and maybe a house party afterwards, y'all are going to have to learn this trade of barbering. And every single day, this man who had a professional job cut hair on the side. Shout out to Robert Russo. This man did not give me the option, but gave me the option of learning a trade, and said to me and his son, if you guys learn this trade, you'll never be broke. You'll never have to ask anyone for money. You'll always be able to go and earn money. That was in the late 80s. Here I am, 1993. I enrolled in barber school in the fall of 93. Later in the fall, I had an experience, Kwame Brown, and this is what I wanted to share with you. I'm in barber school one day, and I hear my name called on the intercom by the receptionist, that I had a client that requested me by name. So I walk around to the reception desk, and there's a gentleman standing there with his hat and his coat, and he extends his hand to me, and he says, "The name is Joe." And this copper-colored man handed me his hat, his derby, and his coat. And I said, in response to him, "How you doing, Mr. Joe? My name is Al." He says, "I know." I walked him around, I hung his hat and his coat up, and while escorting him around, I certainly noticed, because I was in barber school, this was going to be a good haircut. Mr. Joe had a little fuzz on top. He had a little bit more on the side. Oh man, this is going to be a sweet haircut, right? So it didn't take long at all. I finished Mr. Joe, and I removed the cape, went and grabbed his hat and his coat, and was ready to escort him out. And Mr. Joe, when I returned to the chairs, he sat back in the chair. And he asked me, he says, "Son, how long you plan on doing this profession?" And I said, "Well, you know, long enough to retire." He said, "That's good. That's good." He says, "Remember this. The value of what's in your hands, because of where your feet stand behind this chair. In this chair will come people from all walks of life. Some will be excited. Some will be nervous. Some will be joyful. Others will be hurting and frustrated." He said, "You'll have 1-year-old kicking and screaming little boys to the graduates of grade school and college." He said, "You'll have homeless people that you'll have to serve." Don't underestimate the value of what's in your hands, because of where your feet stand behind this chair. You'll service executives, CEOs, presidents, celebrities, clergy, businessmen from all walks of life. And son, I want you to remember one thing. Because if you stick to your plan, by the time you retire or transition, you should become one of the most wise, knowledgeable, and understanding individuals in your community. Why? Not just based on your level of intellect and what you will learn over the years, but if you learn to listen, the people whom you serve, in fact, he said, the men that come and sit in your chair, they'll give you theirs. Their wisdom, their knowledge, their understanding, their understanding, their overstanding, they'll give you theirs. Why? Because of the value of what's in your hands. And for you, because of where your feet stand behind this chair. Mr. Joe was an elderly man, a senior citizen, someone who reminded me of a grandfather. He stood up from the chair, extended his hand again, and said, "Son, I believe in you, and you'll accomplish your purpose in life." I escorted Mr. Joe out, and I shared that with you, Kwame, because of the experience that you shared with the gentleman that imparted wisdom into you every day, giving you a ride. How fortunate and blessed you were, you are, to have been prepared for what was to come on so many different levels. Even for this moment right now in which you stand. I just want you to know, my brother, yet again, that yes, and to confirm that the world heard, and we've been listening, and we know how, because we're already connected to these babies. We've already gained their trust. We stop showing up 2-3 times a year only. Back to school drives, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. And then back to school drives, Thanksgiving, Christmas, another holiday. The thing that would break my heart, as I was an advocate, I became an advocate 1996. 3 years after meeting Mr. Joe. My dad, who was my stepfather, rest in power, was a custodian at an elementary school. I thought I was going to share one story, but I got to share this one. My dad served as a custodian at the elementary school. Now, mind you, this is the father, the dad that took the hand of my mom, along with her 5 children, and brought us in. Gave us discipline, gave us love. Tough love. We didn't know what that looked like. I had issues with it. But I'm so glad that I was always listening. Are we perfect? Heck no. Ain't nobody got time for that. We just have to be. We don't give help, love, and support because it's something we do. It's in the fabric of who we are. In 1996, my dad comes in the barber shop. My first position in the barber shop. Because again, mind you, and I don't know if I completed that statement, I never stepped foot in a barbershop until I graduated from barber school in 1994, because my mom was my barber all my life. And can you imagine the ridicule, the picking on that my brother and I received? My brothers and I, like, can you imagine? Like, Kwame, you already spoke. You already know, as do so many of us. Growing up poor, like we had to improvise. But there was love in the house, nevertheless. 96, my dad comes into the barbershop, and behind him is a little boy that he's brought in to get services. Little man comes in. He's an elementary student. He's 9 years old. And he's visibly nervous, right? Hops up in the chair, and I provide the service. Afterwards, I hand him, or in fact, I hold out the mirror for him to see the results. The young man lights up. His smile is big, his energy, his posture, like everything is elevated, right? In that moment. Shout out to Raymond Ray Graham, that young man. Lil Raymond then hops down out the chair, Kwame, and he wraps his arms around me tight, around my waist. And all I can hear him saying is, "Thank you, Mr. Al. Thank you, Mr. Al." I still feel it. Later on that evening, my dad gave me a call and shared with me that Lil Raymond has a sister also. And they were currently living with their grandparent, their grandmother. Because his parents had recently been murdered in a homicide. And my dad, custodian, janitor, service leader, got permission from his grandmother to bring him to the barbershop because he didn't want other kids picking on Lil Raymond because he didn't have a haircut. I share that to share this. What Mama's cooking revealed to me was that the service I was providing was more than just a haircut. It in fact tapped into, and don't take my word, but just think about your own experience. That hair care service tapped into this young boy's mental stability. It tapped into and elevated his view of himself in the midst of trauma. And there, the words of Mr. Joe came back to visit me. And I'll leave you with this. Mr. Joe said to me, "Son, you're not just gonna become a barber. You're not just gonna become a barber." He said, "In fact, you'll become an image enhancer." Now, I know I'm dropping innovative terminology and jewels that I've already copywritten, okay? Mama's cooking. And I've already protected. However, he said, you'll become an image enhancer because the service that you provide has so many blessings attached to it. Kwame Brown, I know this video was longer than I had anticipated. But I just want to say again to you, sir, and to your mother, rest in power. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for what we'll do in the future, collectively. Because men are choosing to prepare the next generation. And we have the tools to do it. And I just wanted you to hear from one of us. We were listening. Shout out to all the community advocates. I know a lot of you are asking, what are these two bottles sitting in front of me? So one of the things that I've certainly been working on and positioning myself, my company, our organization, is to find a way, create a way to establish a social business. We've seen others do it, and we're very successful. I just needed a product. I needed something that would help me sustain this service to the most underserved students and their families and local communities that go beyond just hair care. But it encompasses mental health services. And we have, as a part of the vision, to have a facility, to have an academy, to have a campus, to have a college that is based on essential services that seem to be a forgotten art. They used to call it, and still call it, trade school. These are the services that we can't live without. And if we position, if we provide for the next generation a platform that gives them an opportunity to develop a skill with their hands, with their minds, we would have done well. And that's what we intend to do. That's our part. That's what we're doing. And for years, only certain stories make the news. And that's fine. But there are so many of us who've been covert, who've been undercover, or in fact, just doing what we do. Because service is not what we do only. It's in the fabric. It's in the DNA of who we are. And where did we get that DNA? Mama's cooking. Listen, that's my time. Again, Kwame Brown, look forward, brother. Just wanted to extend to you. And again, to say thank you. Much respect, much love.